The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
This is a proclamation of the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star rising and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word, that I may too go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them, until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star. And on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord. Did everyone have a happy New Year? Well, that's good. Tell you what, our new year is kind of getting off to a rocky start. I don't know if you guys have been watching the news. Missiles flying, people dying, and talks of war, and we're sending troops across the ocean. Doesn't seem like a very good way to start the new year. Seems rather dark, foreboding. I know every person that has family members that are in the service right now are probably praying to God for peace. You know, it's something that we always do every new year. You know, it's one of the central messages when the Holy Father prays at St. Peter's Square every new year. We always pray for peace, pacem in terram. And today we celebrate the Epiphany, that great revelation of the Prince of Peace, a new type of king in our world. And I think it's very appropriate for us as Christians, as we celebrate this great feast of Epiphany, is to remember that Jesus' birth was during troubled times too. In Jesus' time, there was just as much darkness and violence and oppression and intrigue as there is today. You know, we heard in the gospel today the story of the Magi, the three kings. And I would like to make a little bit of a juxtaposition about the different types of kings we have in our gospel today as we celebrate Epiphany. So we have the three wise men from the east. They were probably from Iran. And we have another king. What's the other king in the Gospels? Herod. We have King Herod. And then we have a third king. And we all know who the birth of that king was. Jesus Christ, our King, the King of the universe. And I want to talk a little bit about these three types of kings that we have here in our gospel today, to help us understand as Christians, as disciples of Jesus, what this all means in a world filled with darkness and violence, and very, very easy to despair, because we have the same three kind of kings in our gospel today. Herod was what you would call kind of a Machiavellian kind of a king, a real realpolitik, a guy that will do everything and anything to keep a hold of power. He will lie, he will cheat, he will steal, he will kill to keep a hold of power. Now that kind of a king is really a weak king, a weak ruler, a weak leader, someone that is so insecure and so terrified that he will lose his power, that he colludes to murder a baby. He plans to murder a child, and just to make sure he gets the right child. That's why did he ask, when did the star first appear? You know, just last week we had the feast of the innocents, of the holy martyrs, where he killed every single child under the age of 2. The slaughter of the innocents, just to hold on to his power. And in the midst of that darkness, in the midst of that evil, in the midst of a ruler that will do anything to hold on to power, something happened. An epiphany happened. An epiphany. What's an epiphany? When someone has epiphany, what's that? A revelation. A light came into the world. A physical light that actually appeared in the heavens. And we have these three kings from the east. These three kings from Persia to modern-day Iran, who see this great light, who see this portent of the coming of a new kind of king, of the coming of the King of Israel, who is not only going to redeem Israel, but redeem the whole world. And these three magi, these three kings, these three wise men who sought out this light, left their homelands, crossed deserts and mountains, endured all kinds of trials and tribulations just for the possibility to see this new king. Now, these three magi, they were probably ordinary men. I mean, they were wise enough to know to look for Jesus. But they certainly weren't perfect. But they were searching for a new way, a new possibility, a new light, to give their treasure in honor of this new king. So that's another kind of king, another kind of leader, someone that seeks out the truth. May not be perfect, but seeks out the truth. And then we have the third type of king, the true epiphany. Jesus, the King of Israel. But more than the King of Israel, the King of the nations. The one sent by God, God incarnate in the world to save all of humanity, to lead all peoples, every single one of us, out of the darkness of a world that can be
what's the word? Cynical. A world that's just seeking the means to the ends. A world where right and wrong start to blur. When people are just looking out for their own interests. The world of Herod. To lead us into a new light, a new world, a new king, a new kingdom. Where God comes into our midst. Where someone, the one who is all-powerful, almighty, does not fear to give up his power. Does not fear to become vulnerable so that he can be with us. Became so vulnerable as to become a little baby, a child of the poor, who became a refugee, running from the Herods of the world, who gave up everything and ultimately gave up his life so that we might not live in darkness, so that the world may not live in darkness, so that a new way of being human, the true way, the full way of experiencing what God has called us to be as human beings. This is the King who has come, the King that has brought this light, this epiphany of a new way of following God in our midst. It's important for us to reflect upon this. Not to hear the gospel and the story of the three wise men and the story of Herod and the story of the birth of Jesus, not just as some quaint little story that we tell during Christmas time, but to remember that this story means everything. That it's alive and it's real in our day, right now. This story of the birth of Jesus Christ, this story of the epiphany of the nations, of the light of the world is important because we live in the same kind of world that Jesus lived in. A world where darkness is constantly trying to seep into our lives. A world where we can be cynical, a world where we can just say the means justify the ends. But we don't live in that. We don't have to live in that world because the light of Christ has dawned, and we need to seek that light out, just as those three wise men sought out Jesus. And we need to give ourselves to that light. We need to give our treasure to that light. And I'm not talking about gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I'm talking about our souls, our hearts. To give ourselves to that new light, that new hope, so that we don't have to live in darkness. And when our brothers and sisters despair, when we think there's no way to escape the violence and the injustices of the world, we can say, no, there's another way. No, there's another King who has come into our world to redeem us. And we carry that light. As the disciples of Jesus Christ, we carry that truth. We carry the incarnation of Jesus Christ in ourselves to bring that epiphany, that light of the world, to all who we meet. Some say that the world of the Herods is the only way we can do it. That's just the way the world is. But remember the last words of the gospel, of those three kings from the east, of those magi from Persia, those three men from Iran. After that encounter with Jesus Christ, after that encounter with the King of Israel, a helpless child, they went another way. And that's what we're called to do as well. We are called to go another way, because the light of Christ has transformed us. We are not the same because we believe that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And He's here among us in our midst now. So do not despair. Don't let the Herods of the world get you down. Be like those three kings, even in our imperfections, to follow that light, to go another way. Because the King has been born. The new King. The King of a new heaven and a new earth. Where the light of God's love will shine forth in our hearts. This year, let us go another way. And let us follow that light that is the epiphany of Jesus Christ, our Lord.